As the de facto capital of the European Union and a center for international politics, Brussels recently hosted the 5th Europe-Africa Business Forum. The summit drew high-level representatives from business and political communities of the European Union and Africa. Delegates discussed Europe's rising role as an international gateway to Africa and the continent's bright economic future. Dialogue focused on, quote, engaging the private sector in sustainable and inclusive growth. Several hundred high-level participants from the European and African private sector, as well as the presence of prominent African officials, set the scene for action at the highest level of implementation. The summit took place at a crucial time in the relations between Europe and the African continent, according to EU Commission President, Mr. José Manuel Barroso.
Europe is open for business from and with Africa. Contrary to what some critics seem to think, Europe is indeed a major player with Africa.
Madam Dlamani-Zuma says Africa's economy has grown threefold in a decade and a half.
Ladies and gentlemen, despite the impact of the ongoing global economic situation, the size of the African economy has more than tripled since 2000. The outlook also appears positive, with the region as a whole expected to grow by 4% for 2013 and 4.6% for 2014. A number of African economies are predicted to remain amongst the fastest growing in the world for the foreseeable future. Africa is also diversifying the investment it attracts.
Indeed, Europe and Africa have a special centuries-long relationship rooted in history. Today, the continents are poised to capitalize on evolving a common political and economic partnership. The private sector will be key to driving Africa's job growth and offering opportunity to a young, fast-growing population, according to Mali's president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta.
C'est un grand défi que nous sommes en train d'affronter. Chez nous, comme dans le reste du monde entier, aujourd'hui, c'est à la fois un atout et une bombe quelque part.
65% of our human capital in Africa are youth. They are less than 35 years.
27% of our university graduates study humanities. Only 2% study agriculture. There is disconnect between our education system and the economic reality. So we need to teach our young people relevant skills so they can participate in the workplace.
Africa understands that the development of the private sector through small and medium-sized enterprises is a powerful engine of economic growth and the main source of job creation. The private sector provides some 90% of the current jobs in many developing countries, making it an essential partner in the fight against poverty.
And to do that, the SME sector is more capable of absorbing these myriad youth in the sense of creating jobs that are not high-tech, automated, but have a certain degree of labor intensity to be able to bring more people in, and agriculture becomes the natural focus.
Nous avons constaté que l'agriculture est le moteur du développement durable en Afrique. En ce moment, nous concentrons tous nos efforts à la promotion de l'agriculture et à la promotion des chaînes de valeur dans l'agriculture.
Panels took time for brainstorming amongst industry players around how best to tackle the problem of risk capital for enterprises, both small and medium, especially startups in Africa, where oftentimes the big challenge is to secure upstream funding for projects and enterprises.
PTA Bank is quite active in supporting SMEs. We do some of it directly, we do some of it indirectly by giving funding to third parties, intermediaries, who then do a better job at retailing and distributing the funding to credit-worthy or promising small and medium enterprises.
In order to make private sector flourish, both in Europe and in Africa, you need the governments taking the right decisions so that private sector can indeed be active, can grow, can create jobs and employment.
When we are talking about improving the environment, part of the improve of the environment should come from public policies. Public policies means improving infrastructure, and yesterday I was listening to one of the speakers in a workshop. We tend to forget that part of the infrastructure is data, for example, availability of data. It's not just port, logistics, roads, but it's much more than that.
The forum stressed the need for cooperation between stakeholders in order to reinforce European-African business and contribute to stronger participation of the private sector in development. The forum reached conclusions and recommendations to be presented to the African and European leaders during the summit opening the next day, in order to promote increased private sector development in Africa and between African and European private sector actors. Herman van Rompuy, President of the European Council, stressed the development of strong bilateral relations between Europe and Africa.
We want to help develop countries and people. We want to promote business while respecting African goals and strategies. Dear participants, bringing together more than 500 leading business people, institutional actors and political leaders here in Brussels is in itself a way to seize the opportunity of developing our business relationships.
Rompuy insisted on the creation of the appropriate conditions to encourage national and international investors to bridge investments in Europe and in Africa.
A favorable investment climate, a level playing field for all investors, good governance, reliable justice systems, and of course peace are the key factors that make the difference when it comes to the private sector's investment strategies.
Rompuy concluded the summit with a well-known African adage.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will end with an old African proverb. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. There is no doubt that in today's globalized world, in our relationship with Africa, we want to go far and we want to go together. Thank you.
Indeed, by doing it together, the 5th Europe-Africa Business Forum nurtured new opportunities for powerful partnership between the two continents.